Hello, everybody. Juan Galt here at Adopting Bitcoin. We're here with Mike from Bitcoin Beach. I just saw you do a little interview with Ricardo from Bitfinex, and it was great sort of story about how you saw and participated in the creation of El Sante's Bitcoin Beach project. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in El Salvador and how the project in El Sante sort of started.
Yeah, so I actually came to El Salvador on a surf trip. I love to surf, and El Salvador's got warm water, so didn't really think much of it at the time, but then, after a few days in, just kind of started falling in love with the country. Just the people here are just super warm, friendly. So I called my wife and said, hey, we need to come back and buy a house here. And so a month later, my wife came with me, and we bought a house in El Sante. And over the next 10 years, we'd spend, maybe 2 to 3 months a year down. We have a seasonal business in the U.S. that gives us a lot of flexibility. So, just fell in love with the community and also started meeting a lot of people, both Salvadorans and also foreigners that were working in El Salvador at that time. El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world. And so there was a lot of NGOs, people running children's homes, people starting churches. And so we decided to be a part of that more kind of behind the scenes and support all these great organizations that were here in El Salvador. And so we moved down full-time about 10 years ago and started an organization called Mission Sake. And through that, we had a heart for the community that we were living in El Sante. We saw a number of the young kids were joining the gang and wanted to do something that gave them, better opportunity to leave that life. And so Jorge Valenzuela was one of the young community leaders that was the kind of person on the ground driving that. We tried to stay more behind the scenes. And so we were pushing the kids to stay in school, giving them incentives to get good grades, hiring them to clean the rivers and the beaches, things like that. And a few years into that, somebody came to us and offered to donate Bitcoin. But one of the stipulations was that we had to use the Bitcoin, not just cash it out to fiat. And I was already a Bitcoiner at that time, but it still seemed like this is going to be challenging because most people had never even heard of Bitcoin. And so to get them to understand that Bitcoin's money and to not just want to cash it out, but to have it circulate. And so,
and a quick thought on the donor. He's kind of like a private, like it's not really known who it is, like kind of like a Satoshi character. Just here's some capital, go make some good stuff.
Yeah, even I don't know who the donor is. Don't know the name. I don't know if it's a man or a woman or who it is. I just met like a representative that they had hired to kind of serve as an intermediary so they could keep their privacy. But I got the impression it was just somebody who wanted to live a fairly simple life, but to use the Bitcoin that they had acquired from being in the Bitcoin early stages to really transform the world. And they saw that the best way to do this was to actually use the Bitcoin transactionally, not just see it as a store of value that you just wait to go up, but actually use it and make sure it's circulating, and especially for people who have been locked out of the traditional financial system. And so he kind of had this, or he or she, whoever it was, had this vision of basically starting a Bitcoin circular economy. And so for me, that was exciting. I was an economics major in school. I've always, I'd spent a lot of time reading about the history of money, and that was actually what brought me into Bitcoin to begin with. And so to have this opportunity to start from scratch a Bitcoin circular economy. And so, that's basically what we did. Very grassroots, very small at the beginning with just a handful of kids, and it's grown into what it is today.
And it's amazing how much it's grown and how influential it's become, how big of a brand it's created. I've heard that El Sante, there's been a lot of investment into it now, like the roads are getting updated and stuff. So I can't wait to see that, and we'll be there on Thursday. But so that's super cool. There's real impact happening. Now, at some point, it went from being a local Bitcoin circular economy project to a national policy level. How did that happen? How did you guys? Was there a conversation, some contact? How did Bukele get involved in all this?
So from the early days, we thought that there was potential for El Salvador to be the first country to adopt Bitcoin. I would tell people that, and they would, you're crazy, there to use the dollar. It'll be Argentina or someplace with dealing with inflation. And my theory was no, in places like Argentina, the government officials benefit from the inflation because they have access to dollars at better rates. They can kind of milk the system and they profit from it. So they're never going to let it change. But El Salvador has already given up the printing press. They were already using the US dollar. And I remember at that time starting to hear about Nayib Bukele was the mayor of San Salvador at that time. And there was rumors he was going to run for president, and he was young, he was embracing technology. And so it just clicked for me like, wow, there could be real potential here. If he wins the election and takes the country in the direction that he's talking about, I think there's potential for this. So we started reaching out to government officials early on. Also, just we wanted to make sure that they didn't think there was something sinister going on. A lot of times people associate Bitcoin with money laundering or drugs or scams. And so our idea was, let's let them know what we're doing. We're doing these community projects. We're based in the community. We just wanted to be very open with what we were doing. And so we also started doing a lot of events in El Zonte. And we started working with the Minister of Tourism. And the Minister, Morena, she's just an amazing tourism minister. And we started talking to her about, hey, there's potential to use this to drive tourism. If El Salvador were to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, it would be this mecca for Bitcoiners from around the world that would come in. And so I think at first she kind of, was like, yeah, sure. But then Forbes did an article on the Bitcoin Beach project. And I think it was the first time El Salvador had been mentioned in like a positive light. Usually all the articles on El Salvador were the murder rate or the gangs. And so this was talking about El Salvador had pictures of the beautiful beaches in El Zonte. And it was in Forbes. And so I think that was a wake-up call for them. They're like, wow, this is an opportunity for us to change the brand that at that time the El Salvador brand was very, very bad. I mean, it was a daunting undertaking to even think about getting tourists to come. Even for me, living here, trying to get family or friends to come visit, they're like, oh, no way. No, I see the news and I see that the State Department says don't go to El Salvador because you'll get killed. And so I think they saw this was an opportunity to change the narrative about El Salvador. And as it grew, as we started getting more international press, Bloomberg came down this story. There was a number of different things. Vice News came down to do like a small documentary, and it just kept growing. And so we started also working with the Minister of Economy and the Minister of Education and trying to get them to see the bigger vision of all the second order and third order impacts of adopting Bitcoin, how it would just help transform even the way people think about El Salvador. And I think they really started to get that vision. And so, but I got to hand it to the president. I mean, he's the one who had to have the balls to actually take that step. It's one thing for us in a small project to tell people that they should embrace Bitcoin. It's another thing as a political leader to take that dramatic step. And it was actually not very popular when he first took that because there was a lot of FUD, a lot of the opposition, telling people, they're going to get rid of the dollar. You'll have to do everything in Bitcoin. Prices are going to go up. And so it was a risk that the president took. But I think he saw the long-term potential of this having to bring business, to bring investment and tourism into El Salvador. And it's borne out. I mean, you see how much things have transformed in the last few years.
Yeah, it's amazing. So real quick, just one more question. Yeah, you're good? Real quick, how do you see the future of El Salvador? We got another election for Bukele coming up next year. Looks like he's doing very well. Another 4 years of his support would be good. What are you looking forward to in the next, let's say, 4 years in this Bitcoin El Salvador story?
Yeah. Fortunately, here they get 5 years. So it'll be another 5-year term. I think we're just in the early stages. There's all these seeds have been planted. There's businesses that have formed their legal entities here, but are in the process of the logistics of moving from Europe or the U.S. and setting up here. And so I think you're just going to see this like magnet attraction of El Salvador, like drawing in capital and entrepreneurs from around the world. And it's going to become this just innovative hub. So I really think we're just at the beginning stages. In 5 years from now, nobody's going to be able to deny the economic miracle that's taken place here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you'd like to, mention or anywhere people want to find you, they can follow you or anything like that?
Yeah, we have a podcast live from Bitcoin Beach. So for people that are interested in what's happening here in El Salvador or thinking about moving here, we try to interview a broad range of people that can give people a perspective of what it's like to live here, but also just come and visit. I mean, it's a place you have to see yourself.
Of course, I'll definitely be on El Sante catching some waves. Good to meet you, man.
You.